So I'm here today with Craig O'Donnell from Grosvenor. Thanks for joining us today, Craig.
No problem.
I thought it'd be interesting to get from the Grosvenor point of view, really get inside one of these innovation and technology roles, just understand your story and how you approach things at Grosvenor, what you're seeing, what some of the challenges are. We'll talk about retrofit, any hot tips you've got of companies to watch maybe. But let's start at the beginning with your sort of tech journey. You've always been into computers and science and things?
Yeah, I think for your listeners probably this is going to be a bit of a history lesson on tech. So I think my first computer was a Commodore VIC-20.
Nice.
Back in the 80s.
Retro.
Where everyone else had a Commodore 64, but my family went for the VIC-20 that didn't have as many games. And then I got an Atari ST after that.
Okay,
which again, a lot of people went for the Amiga for the better games, but I managed to get the ST. So from an early age I've made some pretty crap technology decisions. But no, my degree's in geography. So not tech related, but after I graduated from the University of Strathclyde up in Glasgow, did a bit of tour around Europe with my mates and slept on beaches around France and drank wine and all that kind of stuff, and then got back and the realisation hit that I had to go and find a job. And apart from being a geography teacher, there weren't many jobs at that point that a geography degree helped with, so I then went and did a postgraduate diploma in IT. I started during my degree looking at geographical information systems, so very early GIS. So I always had an interest in tech at that point. And then I got a postgraduate diploma and decided I'd try and find some fame and fortune down in London. So I moved down in 1999. And initially worked for a company called Pink Elephant, not the car parking operator at Heathrow, but actually they were an IT services company, a Dutch company, and I was placed into the IT help desk at Bearings, Bearing Asset Management up the road in 155 Bishopsgate.
Right.
And it was a bit of a baptism of fire. So again, back to that kind of tech history lesson, my first day was the first day of the migration from Novell NetWare to Windows NT, and it was a horrendous experience. The phones were just alive all the time, people had issues. Back in the day when tech didn't work, and a lot of my career has been built on the fact that tech hasn't worked. You tend to fix things, and that's the reason you got jobs in technology. Now technology does work, and it's a bit of a slightly different proposition, but back in those days you were there to fix things without having the blessing of having Google to be able to search and things, so you had to work out how to solve problems yourself. And I was there for a few years, and then I joined Land Securities, so the UK's largest commercial property company at the time. I joined as an engineer, and then I ultimately worked my way up into the Chief Information Officer role. So I've been at Landsec for 17 years in total, and been the CIO for 6, and then I joined Grosvenor 4 years ago.
Okay.
And worked on a project with colleagues. So Grosvenor has a devolved structure. It operates in around 60 cities globally and has operating companies in different geographies. And the board at the time had requested a piece of work from a team which I was part of to look at digital disruption and its impact on real estate. And whilst we came up with lots of nice technologies and interesting stuff, that was only a snapshot in time. And our main recommendation at that point was to be able to understand the threats on an ongoing basis, to be able to create opportunities and create new value for Grosvenor going forward. We recommended a dedicated innovation team. So just over 3 years ago, actually, our anniversary was last week. Myself and my thank you. Myself and my colleague Ian Mayer formed a digital innovation team, and we very much work with our colleagues around the business to understand what their priorities are, and we find technology to be able to support that. We also advise the group on a strategic level in terms of digital disruption, and I think Grosvenor, like any other real estate company, has always not necessarily had a burning platform in terms of the impact of digital. And a lot of our job was trying to create a bit of that burning platform. But I think since the pandemic, even before the pandemic, online retail having an impact on physical retail. We have around 40% exposure to retail across the group. Offices have changed the future of work. What is it at the moment? I think we don't know, and it'll take a while, I think, to get a steady state in terms of what hybrid really is.
So you're trying to, when you say create the burning platform, you're trying to what, drum up some urgency to...
Yeah, to one, look at, to understand that the way that real estate companies have traditionally made income, i.e. charging rent to tenants, in historically upward only way, then that's at risk. And actually most value comes from having a relationship with the end customer, so the consumers of the space. If you think historically real estate had your landlord, you had your tenants, and then you had your customers, or the people that worked for your tenants. And then you had these digital companies that were on the periphery, but there was always a bit of an infrastructure layer, a bit of a firewall between those companies and real estate. But what we've seen in recent years is these digital giants like an Amazon, a Microsoft, a Google, Apple are now starting to directly influence people that occupy buildings. We've now seen tech incumbents disrupting. So for example, WeWork disrupted how people worked in offices. You've seen things like Deliveroo in terms of how it's disrupting the restaurant trade. You've seen obviously different online shopping brands. So thinking about actually the value of real estate is changing, and how do we then, one, I think, protect existing income that we've got, how do we enhance that, and actually the value that we can capture is by engaging directly with the people who consume the space. We've got thousands of workers across our Mayfair and Belgravia estates that historically we've never really engaged with. And we've only engaged with the person that signed the lease on behalf of the occupier. Actually, those people that work in our buildings spend money on the streets, they dine in restaurants, so actually can we help influence that to benefit our community of occupiers that we've got is very important for us.
Okay, various strands we could pick up on there. I'm interested on whether there's disruptors. You've mentioned one in WeWork. Maybe that's one thing, but also you talk about understanding the pain points and the challenges for your colleagues, and then finding solutions to match. I'd be interested in that process of how you source, the infamously vast, confusing landscape of thousands of tech companies. How do you sort of choose ones to put forward as potential options?
Yeah, it is a vast pool, so you do need focus. And what we've developed some key focus areas that we do target our activities on, so otherwise it could be quite a fruitless exercise, so you have to be quite targeted. But just to put it in context, this year so far we have scouted 450 startups. We've then, and that's a funnel, so we scout, and then the ones that we like and we rate we'll then want to arrange an initial meeting with. So we've met with more than one startup a day so far this year.
Wow. So what are your categories, and what's your judgment?
So the categories, so Grosvenor is committed to being net zero by 2030 across our global portfolio. So sustainability solutions, climate tech is a big area for that. We might touch upon it later in terms of retrofit, but I think to be able to improve the energy performance of a building to reach something like net zero by 2030, you're not going to do that by chipping away at 10%. You're going to have to rethink completely how you do things. So looking at a lot around those solutions. Future of retail, as I've mentioned, we've got a big retail exposure, and if you think of Mayfair and Belgravia, we're not going to sell out of those locations, so actually reimagining how retail operates, and I think what we've seen in retail in recent years, and will continue, I think, is just a rebalancing. It's been an oversupplied market, and I think there's a rebalancing of that. Future of work, as I've mentioned. We look around technologies as well to improve how we operate as a business, particularly around AI, machine learning, and looking at optimizing how we do things. And then I think the last one, which is a bit of a hot topic, is, and we've called it beyond the built environment, so this whole thing about what does the metaverse mean within a real estate context, so we're starting to think about that as well.
Oh right, okay. there seems to be the jury's out as whether that's taken seriously or not.
Yeah, but I think the great thing of being in an innovation team and you're dedicated to doing this stuff is, well, you don't learn if you don't try stuff out.
Yeah.
And innovation is about, people talk about failing fast, but it's about learning fast. So try something, and being curious is a very good behaviour to have when you're talking about innovation, is being curious and trying to just experiment.
Absolutely. So you've described some of your categories there: sustainability, future of work, future of retail, efficiency within the business. So how do you then go and get into this scouting process, the 450 companies this year? Talk us through that.
Yeah, so we have a kind of ecosystem of partners that we use, plus we do the scouting ourselves in a team. And I think initially 3 years ago, I might not have been able to answer this question because we didn't really have the expertise, so it's very much learning, and I think that's where we lent a lot in partners. So we've used Plug and Play for a number of years, who are based out of Silicon Valley but have a global presence, and they operate deal flows on your behalf, so you give them a problem statement and then they'll source startups. We work with a company based in the UK called True Global, that's a retail and consumer specialist that does the same. So they've invested in the likes of Zwift, for example, and Renewable Cycles. So we've used them, and then a company called F6S as well. It's a bit similar to Plug and Play, that operate a database of startups, and we work with them in rating who we like. But from the start of the year, we've brought some more people into the team, and using online tools that you can get that have these databases, we've started developing the skills and experience to do a lot of that scouting ourselves. But it's a lot of work. So the funnel is very broad at the start, and you have to filter it down, and you do see a lot. And I think what I try to explain as well to these partners and also startups is timing is everything. So it might be that, and actually today we had a conversation, a startup that we saw 6 months ago and we didn't progress with, might solve a problem that we've got today, and actually having that record of what the startup does, and you can then revisit it. So I think timing is everything in these things, because all of a sudden business might have a particular need, and you might scout a new one, but you've also seen one in the thousands that you've scouted so far that might apply. So it's having that knowledge that and recording all the interactions that you've got. So then we scout, we meet, so we tend to do 20-minute meetings. I think within the first 5 minutes you work out if the technology is any good.
Right. Are you judging the tech, not the sort of
we're judging the tech and the people, and I think the longer you go on working with a business, particularly very early stage, it's less about the tech, because ultimately it might pivot over that period of time, so the solution might change. So getting conviction and assurance from the people that you're working with is really, really important. Particularly in what we do, is we have a model that we find solutions and we try them, and we're a customer of them. And we work with a startup to develop a product, particularly if it is a very early stage. And through that process of trialing it, we then, one, get to understand, does the product meet our needs, and two, are we comfortable working with the founders in the business? And through that process, we're doing quite a lot of due diligence, and then if they're looking to raise funds for investment, we will then look to invest in some companies at that point once we've been a customer and we've done that due diligence. So we have invested in some tech startups as well, but only ones that we're a customer of first.
And how important is it that they're well capitalised, that they've got a track record, or are you not averse to taking a punt on something?
No, so I think the sweet spot for us, because I think we've also invested in some funds, which the ones that we've invested in tend to do a bit later stage, so we've got exposure in that regard. The ones that we're more interested in, I think, what what we see to capture most value from is that early stage that we can help scale and become mainstream. And we think that through that process, so they might not be heavily capitalized at that point, they might have just went through angel funding by that point, they might be a seed, they might be in the lead up to a Series A. That's kind of our sweet spot, and we'll invest small amounts, but into
how much roughly?
Around probably 300 to 500,000.
Right. And how many investments have you done like that?
So across the group, so far, 5.
Okay.
So we've done some in Asia, some in the UK, and then we'll look to do some more in North America coming up as well.
Okay. And any interesting results that you can talk about, that you've really seen an impact of things?
Well, I think the one that was our first investment was a retail tech startup called Near Street. So NEARST. And what they do is that they work with the retailer and have the retailer's live store inventory integrated into the likes of Google. So if you search for a white shirt on Google in your local area, it'll show you the retailers who have integrated with Near Street that have it in stock.
Yeah.
And historically, the customer journey would be that somebody would search for a white shirt and it'd just be directed to an online retailer to make that transaction. But what Near Street allows, and they update it for 15 minutes, is give that live store inventory of stores around you in a local area. And if you can imagine during the pandemic, for example, where people were making a lot more purposeful shopping visits, so you were restricted in terms of how you could go into a store. So you weren't wanting to go into a store and it didn't have it in your size, for example, so you're wanting assurance that the product was available. And we saw near me product searches increase exponentially during that period. But what we did in Mayfair and Belgravia 2 Christmases ago, we also paid a market research company to be out in the streets and asking people why they were on the streets at that point. And 30% of people that were on our streets were there because they saw the product on Google first.
Wow. So has Near Street had a good take-up?
And what we saw, that drove £165,000 worth of incremental sales in a 2-week period. Gosh. Over that Christmas period. Because for us, we're looking for products that would help attract footfall into physical stores, and Near Street does that. And through working with Near Street and implementing in Mayfair and Belgravia, we then decided to invest. It's quite funny, for a 340-year-old property business, this was a completely new thing, as you can imagine. We actually wrote Startup Investing for Dummies paper to help our colleagues understand what to look out for in these types of investments. And we made a small investment. We've since followed on because they've done a bridging round before they go for the Series A. But it's been a very good learning experience. And if you think, a lot of companies at that stage will go on to fail, they won't succeed, and particularly at this moment in time, capital has become a lot more constrained, the prop tech market is a lot more turbulent.
Yeah.
I think we'll see quite a lot of rebalancing of valuation, so I think there'll be less startups in that vast pool available in 12 months' time, because I think a lot will fall by the wayside because they won't be able to raise as much money as they have done historically.
Yeah, it's tightening up already. So talk to us about the adoption within Grosvenor. How difficult is that internal sale and getting people to take these new solutions on?
We've created an innovation lab called The Foundry, which is a place that we're always keen to create a space that we could run experiments in a safe environment. The good thing, I think, within our business, probably over the last 24 months, innovation has been a big priority across the organisation. People are thinking about doing things differently, but also it's this concept I've said before, is that not all things will work, and therefore just having the confidence to experiment in something might not work. It's not a slant on you if it doesn't. Yeah. But the key is that you don't get wedded to something, that you don't spend months and months trying to make it work. You cut your losses and you move on to the next thing, and that's important.
And how is it organised within the sort of business plan? I mean, Grosvenor is obviously very successful, very organised. Is there a budget for innovation, or is it just sort of throughout the business, and if it works then they'll find it?
Yeah, I think and before we set up the innovation team, and when the board initially said we like this idea of setting up an innovation function, but we need you to put a bit more meat in the bones in terms of what that may look like. We spoke to around 40 organisations globally around their innovation approaches, and one of the biggest things that came out was budget often gets in the way of innovating. So back to your question about business plan, if somebody doesn't have a line item in their budget for a specific solution, then they sometimes in a large organisation find it difficult to find extra money to do things. So within our team, we've set up a working capital budget, because we never wanted not having budget available to stop us doing the right thing. But we set up the team to be very capital constrained from the start, because again, in real estate, it's very easy to throw money at solving problems, but we wanted to be resourceful and be innovative. So actually, being limited in the capital we had was very important. But again, if we want to run an experiment, Near Street was a great example. We funded that from a central budget that we held, because we didn't want the fact that an asset team didn't have the budget available to stop us doing the right thing. So we do that, but then once something scales, then you can bake it into future years' budgets in terms of paying for it. But initially, the experimentation comes from a budget allocation that we've got, and it's based on the broad themes that we've got. We're not very specific in terms of what we look at.
Can you talk about the sort of the size of that budget? How much you got?
Yeah, so I think when you think of a company the size of Grosvenor, we've allocated this year £250,000 for working capital. Right. If we hit that top ceiling and we need to ask for more, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I think it'll be made available as well. It's not going to stop us again, but having something that's quite a low amount helps focus the mind in terms of being resourceful as well.
And how important is the buy-in from the C-suite, from the board, that they get it from the top down as well?
Yeah, no, extremely important. So our UK business, for example, everyone has within their personal objectives an innovation objective. The teams across the business are focused on these activities. So it's very important from that respect. But certainly our team reported into the group chief exec, so that again is very important. And we work with all our chief execs from all our operating companies in terms of how we then work with their teams. So we've got buy-in at the senior level, which again is really, really important from an innovation perspective. And I say, yeah, we've been going 3 years. I think that's a testament in terms of the activity we've got, because innovation teams often get questioned in terms of the value they add to the business. So right. Still going strong after 3 years, I think.
Good to hear.
It's a good place to be in.
Good to hear. I wanted to talk to you next about retrofit. Obviously, there's some old stock, to say the least. 500-600 years you've held things in Mayfair, Belgravia. There must be some challenges about bringing things up to modern standards and around energy performance and monitoring. Talk to us about how you approach the great challenge of retrofit.
Yeah, I think probably the main thing is, what I would say is there's not like a one-size-fits-all approach to this. Like when you even trying to get plans of our buildings, you have to go into the archives of Westminster to find some of these things, if they exist at all. So a lot of solutions that you see are based on modern buildings with modern building management systems and modern HVAC and all those sorts of things. But yeah, in a heritage estate that you don't have that. So trying to explain that to a tech startup is a challenge. We made a joke to one company that we saw recently who was American that actually Grosvenor as a company is older than America as the country.
Yes, yes, quite.
And that just like blows their mind. But yeah, to think about the heritage buildings that we have, and even simple things like understanding footfall across the London estate. We can't put technology outside buildings because they're heritage assets and you wouldn't get planning permission for them. So we've got to be very creative in terms of different solutions that we look for. I guess there's things, so we're looking at lots of kind of glass technologies at the moment. So again, a lot of glass innovation, and particularly around PV panels and those sorts of things. And reducing heat loss from buildings are based on glass solutions that have a tint to them, which from a design perspective is not great, so we're never going to get approval to put those in our buildings. So we're working with a Swedish startup called PFIL that's working with NSG Pilkington Glass, and we're looking at developing a solution that's fully transparent PV that can, one, capture energy from the sun, but also reduce the energy that's going out. I'm not saying, for example, that normal glass in a building is going to be enough power to power the building. That's not going to happen. But it could be enough power to power the IoT sensors, for example, that you have. So it's all about those marginal gains at the end of the day, and looking at different things to do. So yeah, retrofit is a challenge. I think across the estate we've probably only got 14 buildings with building management systems. So how do we then look to improve energy performance? Well, putting in sensors that we can deploy quickly and easily to just get data about performance of buildings is very important. Air quality is very important within the buildings as well, so a lot of solutions around that.
And why is it that those other buildings can't take a modern building management system? Because the BMS vendors would say they can go into any building.
Yeah, but the nature of almost what's like a townhouse in Mayfair, for example, it's not the cost benefit of trying to put in a building management system to manage that sort of environment is just not there. So yeah, I think you could install a building management system, but it's probably a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut at the end of the day.
Yes.
Actually, it gets hot, open the window, it might be the answer on some things, but actually insulation, but better quality glass, those sorts of things we can do. And then I think a lot of what the team are looking into, and not an area that my team, but across the business, is things like circularity within construction. So the reuse of steel and glass and those sorts of things is becoming very important for growing as a business.
And there's a big debate in the industry about who pays. We've seen some of the astronomical estimates of how much it's going to cost to retrofit the standing stock that we've got. Is there an approach within Grosvenor, within the model that you've come across of how retrofit's going to be funded?
Yeah, I think it's one of these things. I think if you try and work out how to probably make money from it, then it probably stop you from doing it. And I think things like sustainability still come with a premium. They have over recent years, but there is a cost of doing the right thing currently. As things become more commoditized, then it becomes more cost effective. But I think how we charge or commercialize that is something I think that will work out in the future. But at the moment, we're just concentrating on, particularly around our operational carbon, how we can reduce that across our estate. Because ultimately, I think what will happen is that the buildings that are more energy efficient will be the ones that will have a higher rental premium to them. People want to occupy more. I think that's probably where you recover your cost at the end of the day. And
how is Grosvenor going on its decarbonising journey? Have you been able to reduce carbon?
Clear pathways defined. So we want to be neutral by 2030, and we're looking to look at solutions to help us achieve neutrality by 2025 as well. We might do some offsetting to help do that. We might look at how we can generate some of our own power through solar energy to help produce energy for our estate. We're looking at waste. So yeah, I think and what we have seen, and I've just recently come back from a trip to Silicon Valley where from a country that didn't believe, or they had a government that didn't believe in climate change a few years ago, to one that now does, and you're now starting to see a lot of new innovation in that area. The UK and the European market is a lot more mature from a customer base, and I think all the UK real estate businesses have got this at the top of their agenda, which is great to see, and I think it will take industry collaboration to achieve the targets that we've all got. As a country, well, obviously 2050 was a target, but I think most real estate companies now have got 2030 as a target, and I think working together in a collaborative way is the way to achieve that, and working together in a collaborative way around innovation is going to be a way to do that as well, I think.
Absolutely, there's no point not sharing the knowledge and the learnings from this. We've all got to do it. Thank you very much for your time, Craig O'Donnell from Grosvenor. Really enjoyed that, and lots of takeaways for people listening. Thanks again for joining the PlaceTech podcast. I've been Paul Unger, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you.